Dragon Ball Daima episode 13 review, the first one of 2025, and it was a bad episode. I'm just going to be straight up. It was a bad episode, and I have a bunch of reasons why. As far as story continuation, it was bad. It was fun, but it was bad. And there was a whole bunch of stuff they did in this episode which made it bad. All right, and let me just get out. Well, let me get out the good stuff out of the way first. Well, you know what? Let me start off with the bad. All right, so more time wasting in this episode. So Dragon Ball Daima has a habit of just retreading the same thing of the ship getting broken down, like the ship getting stolen, something happening with the ship, and it's just at this point it's tedious. It's unnecessary. It's a time waster. When these characters can just fly and stuff at this point, it's just a time waster, and that kind of stuff is just bogging the story down. And not only that, but this Daima in this episode pretty much did a retread of GT episode 6, which I actually love that episode of GT. It's a very nice episode. But there is an episode of GT, literally the one right after episode 6, episode 7, which was a retread of Dragon Ball's episode 4, like the one with Oolong. And that episode of those two episodes, 7 and 8 with Tsunamo, like those were largely a waste of time. Like they didn't even, Goku was present during the Oolong, like obviously he was present for Oolong and those episodes of GT. And not once did he ever make the connection that, he remembered Oolong, and this is very similar to Oolong. And with this, of course, he's not going to be able to remember something from GT because that happens in the future. But it's like, it's just such a it's a wasted opportunity as well. And here's why. So this is the point that I wanted how it's a wasted opportunity. So one, instead of using this episode to further the villain's goals or intertwining the villains in the story, there is a small aspect of them, turning off the warps. But this was so disconnected from Goma and stuff that it's just, why was this episode here, I'm not angry at it. I'm just pointing out the facts. Like, this episode was a waste of time. Instead of just having this be a separate event, like almost every other interaction they've had with other demons, they could have tied this into Goma's motivations. He knows that they're coming to the first demon realm, and we know that Goma has connections to the second and third demon realm. Here's a solution to this. Say that Goma is the one telling these giants, hey, Goku and them are trying to come here, and that these giants are super powerful, and let's just say Goma's offering them incentives to do this, like he's giving them food. Have them attack Goku and we'll give you food or whatever. You could have tied this in so that it doesn't feel like a waste of time. And instead of him turning off the warps here, he could have saved that for after this episode when Goku had and the rest of the heroes had already beaten the giants. So not only do you further the story by having Goma, crap his pants that they're coming to the first demon realm, but you could also have it like, okay, kill them off and then bring the Dragon Ball to the first demon realm so that I could have the Dragon Ball, and then I'll reward you with, whatever you want. Right? But, it's just so separated. It's very inconsequential, that is, and this ties into the epiphany I had about Dragon Ball Daima, like pretty much when it was announced last year, or 2023 wasn't last year, so 2 years ago at this point, over a year ago. But yeah, like I mentioned, so I told you guys why this episode was a waste of time and pointless, and I offered a solution that would have made this episode way better. So I'm not hating on anything. I don't hate Dragon Ball at all. I'm just saying this was a waste of time. Understand, this episode was an actual waste of time, and I offered a solution to how to make it better. All right, and the other point I got is, there was other things that I liked, like the scene with the ticks. It looks so trippy. I like that scene so much. Like when Goku had hit the dog, and then the scene with ticks was like, it had this weird negative camera effect, and it felt like I was underwater, but I could still breathe. It was weird, and I liked it. So, there's one good takeaway from this episode that was largely a waste of time. I mean, Arintu finally called Glory Hole in this episode, which Goku's still mispronouncing his name also, so that's funny. But she also called him in this episode, and she checked in on him. So, but that was the only thing. What the heck ever happened to Majin Ku and Majin Du? Like, where are they? There's another aspect of this episode I like. This video is kind of disjointed, but there's another aspect, like how Goku was getting chased by the hamsters. I thought that was kind of funny. It reminded me of Rick and Morty, like Pickle Rick, like that episode. So, that was kind of cool. It also reminded me of GT episode 6, like I mentioned earlier. This episode was ripped from GT episode 6, which Toriyama was very heavily involved in because he provided the artwork for that episode. And with Pan with the bees, right? So there was bees in that episode, and then there was hamsters in this one. And so I thought that was a pretty cool trade-off. But like I mentioned earlier, this episode being a waste of time and just, kind of for the laughs, reminded me of the epiphany that I had when Dragon Ball DAIMA was announced. And I didn't care for whether Dragon Ball Super came back or whether it was DAIMA. It just didn't really matter to me. I just didn't really care, But I always knew, like, okay, 40th anniversary series. I pretty much from the start, if you, like, this is obvious stuff to me. Like, if you didn't know this was gonna, be almost like early Dragon Ball, and even with Dragon Ball GT with Goku and the others being turned into kids, if you didn't know that this show was gonna end up like this, I mean, come on, really? Like, I knew this show would end up like this. So this episode, story-wise, like pushing the story-wise, which even in early Dragon Ball, it doesn't ever feel like it was a waste of time when they would travel to Yamcha's Desert or the freaking 5-Pound Mountain. It didn't feel like a waste of time, but some of these episodes just feel so inconsequential, like a waste of time, because they already gathered all the Dragon Balls at this point, pretty much. So it's just at this point, it's plotting, padding. It's pointless. So story-wise, it's a waste of time, but nostalgia, all that stuff, it makes sense why they're doing this. And so that's the reason why DAIMA is the way it is. Like, you'll get episodes that make you feel like, oh wow, like this show is really awesome. Like with the episode just last week, 2 weeks ago, episode 12. You're thinking, okay, like the story's moving, and then but it's also at the same time giving you nostalgia or like fan service, like Vegeta going SS3. So you're always gonna get the fan service. It's just a matter of, will this episode push the story forward, or will it waste time on stuff like green rocks that has nothing to do? Like, what will these green rocks in the future? How will they affect the story in the future? I doubt they'll have any effect on, the end of this series. And that's what I'm trying to get across here. That this stuff is very largely inconsequential. Stuff like the Kaioshin only drinking water from what episodes back. That hasn't been brought back up. Pointless. But important things like Glorio's relationship with Arinsu, that's almost non-existent. Things like Goma in this series, he's almost non-existent. I mean, he's starting to, become more prominent, but things like that, he's almost non-existent. But, I mean, next week's episode is looking almost more the same, but just Goku looks more hurt. So, episode 14's looking largely the same, maybe better. I'm going to be optimistic. I don't hate Dragon Ball like I mentioned earlier. I'm going to be optimistic. I just already knew what I was in for. So, keep them coming, I guess. Episode 14 is on the way. That's the review. I'll see y'all in the next one. Check out the Easter eggs videos and the new videos that I posted like a week ago. 2 weeks ago at this point. The regular show is phenomenal, and regular, like Dragon Ball Easter eggs and regular show and whatnot. Check those out. I'll see you on the next one.